Hey
Hello.
everyone.
How are
Hello.
you?
Hi.
I can't believe we're in November. I hope everybody had a nice either Diwali or Halloween, or if you sat inside and enjoyed some quiet, good for you. It really was a busy night for so many people last night, that's for sure.
And 20 degrees. Like,
That
who
was
would have thought?
beautiful. I sat on my front porch from 6 o'clock until 9 o'clock. Yep, we just sat out there and enjoyed everything. It was so lovely to be able to do that.
It's nice.
Yeah,
We don't really get trick-or-treaters up here,
no, I
like
know.
cottage country, so they're all gone. But they do have like a little Halloween thing in town, indoor set where you can bring your car and bring your kids, and there's like candies and cars and stuff. People just
Yeah.
open up their trunk
Nice.
Trunk,
and
yeah,
like a
trunk or
tent
treat.
party. Trunk or
Trunk
treat.
or treat. Yep. You decorate the back of your car and then you go car to car. Yep,
Oh,
exactly. Yep.
what'd you dress up as, Kath?
I didn't do
Wonder
it.
Woman?
Yeah, Wonder Woman.
You should be there handing out toothbrushes or something. You got to help them out. There you go.
I'll go next year. We did say that last night. We'll go next year.
Yeah. It's so cute to see all the little kids, that's for sure. Hey, Lorraine, nice to see you.
Hi,
Irene.
Lorraine.
Hi.
All right.
Wow. Great group of people already on so far, which is awesome.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're excited about this.
We're excited for today. We have a few little surprises in store. So let's remember we're going to select 3 winners throughout the show as well, that we're going to send them something through mail. And yeah, so for those of you who are joining us live, if you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A section. If you just want to say hi and even tell us where you're at or where you're from. There's Roma. Hello. You can just use the chat there. And to get the CE certificates, give us a few days, like early next week. We will put this into your portal, put the recording into your portal. There's a few questions for you to answer, and then we'll issue the certificate. So that'll be next week, probably by Wednesday. Nova Scotia, nice. Very nice. We always love these days. It's always nice to get to see, I get to see you guys, which is awesome. And there's Heather. I have to do a little shout out for Heather and Renata. They were both the moderators for Spectrum on Friday, and they did a fabulous job. So I have a feeling like we're going to see those two a little bit more often doing that type of thing, because they were naturals at it. It was so fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have the great honor of introducing one of my dearest friends, Joanne Jones, a truly remarkable individual and powerhouse in the dental community. Joanne's journey as an international award-winning speaker has taken her around the world, where she has delivered over 1,000 presentations with her trademark energy, life, and inspiration. Her dynamic speaking style and depth of knowledge have made her a sought-after lecturer for good reason. Joanne's passion for improving lives shines through her in her commitment to the Oral Cancer Foundation, where she partners to raise awareness about oral and oropharyngeal cancer screening, her role in launching the International Check Your Mouth campaign, encouraging, I don't know why I can't breathe right now. I've just had such a busy morning, encouraging oral self-examination between professional visits, demonstrates her dedication to empowering others to take charge of their health. Please join me in welcoming my incredible friend, Joanne Jones.
Thank you so much, Kath. And where do I send that check to? What's your mailing address now? Anyway, I am thrilled. I love being on The View, the RDH View, because as all your enthusiastic members know and recognize that this is more of a casual conversational style. And it's an opportunity for all of us to, share our expertise, our insight, and ask some questions. And I just love the format. So thank you so, so much for inviting me.
You're one of our favorite guests on the show, Joe. So we just wanted to start this whole conversation about just kind of talking about the link, like how you started talking about the link between HPV and oropharyngeal cancer. What started you on that journey?
Well, it goes back actually years ago, probably back to 2008, 2009. And at that point in time, when I did deliver a lecture or presentation on this subject, people would look at me like I had absolutely 10 heads. Nobody had heard of it. And now, whenever I go and lecture, usually in the US, but anywhere, people will come up during the break or at the end and say, one of our staff members was diagnosed with this, or somebody within their intimate circle has been diagnosed with it, or themselves. So it is no longer something that is hidden. Why do I keep talking about this after all these years? Well, initially, what happened, which really fueled my passion, was the fact that my cousin, shortly after I was asked by the CDHA to present my research at a national meeting, informed the family and friends that she had been diagnosed with late stage HPV-associated tonsillar cancer and fought such a hard fight. Like if the cancer itself isn't hard enough, it's the treatment. The morbidity that follows because of the treatment regimen is absolutely horrific. And for those of you that are listening that have gone through this or witnessed it, you know exactly what I am talking about. And we lost her 16 months later. So what was my passion at that point? I'm not sure whether mission, passion, what is stronger, but whatever was weaker became stronger when we lost her. The interesting thing is, or the sad thing is that more than 70% of our population is totally unaware of the association between the human papillomavirus or HPV and head and neck malignancies that are exponentially increasing at a staggering rate. So this message is all about saving lives, and we as dental professionals have the power to do so. And I'm sure I'd love to hear from the rest of you because you're all active lecturers. Do you find there's an overlap, sometimes even in the topics that you're presenting, that may not actually be related specifically to oral or oropharyngeal cancer, but you're hearing more about this as well?
I am. I was at Todd's last weekend in BC, and part of my lecture was my red flag. So it was like assessing and talking it. And there were quite a few people that said, like, we need to be more aware of the HPV conversation. I need knowledge on how to have that with my patients. What am I looking for? Where are we going? And ironically, I was like, well, I know just the lady. You need to look up Joanne Jones. You need to kind of follow her. She's really pioneering this. But people are starting to be aware, but there's still a lot of stigma about having that conversation and offending people about it. And I feel like there's a bit of resistance when I speak to some hygienists because they don't want to do it wrong. And so sometimes they're just not doing it. And so I think that by not doing it, actually, sometimes that is maybe not the ideal situation.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. What about you, Beth? Anything, from the standpoint of having this conversation come up, or people indicating that they just feel awkward about it, or
I think I'm noticing a positive change in that regard. And I really think that you have a lot to do with that. Even in my own professional career, I think I had shared with you a while ago that when I used to do oral cancer screenings, I wouldn't, and I'm ashamed to say this, but I wouldn't call it what it was. I would almost soften it. Oh, I'm looking for lumps and bumps. And it's like I wanted to make it, it's like I wanted to make it pretty or softer or something. And I really feel like that was a disservice to the patients. And I think I felt so guilty about it that I started to talk to other colleagues to see if they were experiencing the same thing, and they were. But that was maybe 15 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago. And I feel like it's a different conversation now. And like I say, I think it's largely to do with your mission and what you've been doing and how you're helping us all to just be more confident with that.
thank you.
You know, Paul and I, we go see Desiree, dental hygiene with Desiree up in Huntsville. And he always says, he goes, after I see Desiree, I feel like I've just had a medical appointment because she's so thorough with that, where he's never experienced that before. So that's that's really great to hear. And that it's great that she does that.
Awesome. I travel 3-hour round trip to my dental hygienist. I'm going to give her a shout out because I don't think we have to have anonymity here, but Julie DiNardo, Gleam Smile Center, and Victoria DiNardo, because I know I'm going to get what I want and what I need to have. And I'm sure there are others around me, but I know of her, and it is a privilege and a joy. I actually go on Monday, so looking forward to that.
They're awesome
Nice.
too.
Joe, just on this topic, when we've seen this shift in how dental hygienists are approaching this subject. But I do wonder, and maybe you'll have more insight in this than I do. I think about my education. Do you feel like the education out there right now for dental hygienists, do you feel like it is preparing us to have these conversations about HPV with our patients? What are your thoughts on education right now?
Well, I don't have to think about it for very long. No,
Okay.
it,
Okay.
it is not. And the reason I say that, and it's no discredit at all to academia, to curriculum, but it takes so long in order to get information into place. And then there is the classroom type of education, which talks about the incidence, the prevalence. And I know it's happening out there. And I know personally, with working in directorship of a dental hygiene program, that we had absolutely fantastic faculty that did everything they could to stay on top of it. But it's that knowledge translation piece that often is lacking, where we've learned it and we have the textbook knowledge, but then we get out into clinical practice, and also the whole reality of getting out into clinical practice and having 45 minutes or an hour when we had hours and hours and hours in our clinical capabilities when we were in college or university, and all of a sudden having it condensed into such a short time frame. We need help, we need assistance. And I guess that has always been a congruency that all four of us have had. It's our signature when we do present, is that we have resources for people, that we don't leave them hanging. We don't say, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And to that, I am absolutely thrilled with what my colleague and my bestie, Kathleen, has actually put together with the HPV talking points. And that is something that is going to be provided to everyone that has registered. And that's a tangible way of saying, hey, we get where you're at. We know your time commitment is limited. And here's how to initiate the conversation. And also, here's the science that you can stand behind to have the confidence to boldly talk about these things. So again, it is no discredit to alumni, to faculty that are out there doing an amazing, valiant job at education, but it's the opportunity to be able to follow that up full circle and provide that knowledge translation piece. And RDHU has done it beautifully. So thank you, Kathleen, for doing that.
That's the thing. Thank you. And that's the thing with the professional development is after we finish school, it doesn't stop there, right? There's so much we have to learn while we're in school. But the
Yes.
opportunity is there to come to your hands-on training, go see you at lectures, and always looking for areas to grow, to learn, to improve. Yeah, because it doesn't stop there. And I see a lot of dental hygienists think that they're done. You know, I've finished school. I don't need to look at this or learn more for a while, but there's so much that we have to learn that continues on after that type of education.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Particularly, it might have an impact. Sorry, Carrie, I just want to quickly say on saving a life.
Yeah.
yep.
Hey, Carrie.
No, totally. We do save lives. And so to your point, Kath, I was actually just going to say a lot of people think that I was taught how to do an oral cancer screen in school. And so I know what I'm doing, whether I choose to do it fully or not. It's like Jenga. I feel like we see patients and it's like we're playing Jenga. They come in 5 minutes late. Well, I'm not going to do this because I need to survive this. And, we're constantly making these decisions. But with the ever-changing landscape of HPV, with all the things that I learned in school, what I need to look for, and now what I know I think I need to look for, how do we address these changes? Like, how do we figure out this profile for screening? Because I feel like there's so many things that we still need to adapt into clinical practice.
Great question. And totally understand where you're coming from on that, because the call to action with the Chief Dental Officer was that we as oral healthcare professionals have a great opportunity to be able to share prevention strategies, evidence-based information. But there was no talk of, okay, so how does this actually change our exam? And the other thing we have to remember is we're dealing with an area. If we look at the anatomy, stick out your tongue. I don't want you to all stick out your tongue, but if you stuck out your tongue, that V-shaped trough, the sulcus terminalis, everything distal to that is fair game for the love of, or the affinity that the human papillomavirus has, is all in that area, of which there is extremely limited visual acuity. So it's not so much the change up in the exam, but there is a change up in an area that is very, very critical. But it's the recognition of the subtle symptoms. That is really, really critical. And also understanding that these are things that may not present themselves to us other than with a palpable lymph node. And when you consider at that point in time, when we have discovered that hard fixed node, we are already getting into a later stage discovery. And that's the really difficult part. Now, there is oral HPV infection that we have to be aware of as well. So that's going to be more in the oral cavity, everything anterior. And I want our listeners to think of like a little tiny cauliflower. That's the best way to explain it. That's what it looks like. And you want to look at the point of contact where, you know, the tongue, the roof of the mouth, the buccal mucosa, all of those areas, point of contact is where we're going to see more of this prevalence. So when you've got youth in your chair, you know, even though we talk about that minimum of an annual full extraoral, intraoral examination once a year, I guess that would be annual, right? But when we look at having youth in our chair and knowing from our social studies that oral sex is happening at that, you know, young 15 to 17-year-old age group or younger, that we should be checking all of those areas. That is so, so important. So great questions. I have a question, actually, because we should start probably with our polling questions, because we've got about 8 of them. So here's what's going to happen. So listen up. I am going to have the cast members select their response to each of these questions. So we have 8 of them, as I said, and we're going to go through them systematically. But then I'm going to have the lovely Beth Parks launch the question, and then I'm going to read it again and give our audience an opportunity to weigh in. So I want you to remember, like, this is an interactive way to test your knowledge. Let's make it fun. Nobody's going to know that, oh, Margit, hi Margit, by the way, or Lorraine selected this particular response. Oh, she didn't know that, or he didn't know that. That's not the way this works. You are totally anonymous. So take the opportunity to kind of join in and actually know, right? That's important.
We're not anonymous, just for the
No.
record. Okay, so
No.
we are very vulnerable, and I can tell you, I was like, what do I need to study before I get on? And Beth's like, don't worry, it's going to be fine. If you get it wrong, it's going to be okay. It's going to be learning. We don't lose, we learn. So this is our take. So we feel very vulnerable, just for everyone watching. Okay.
I love that.
Excellent.
That's one of my mantras. You don't lose, you learn. What was that, Kat? Sorry.
I think I'm losing connection. I might lose you.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh.
exactly. Yeah. Yes, I know you're feeling very vulnerable, and I was feeling actually very mischievous and quite mean when I gave the questions out, because I did not allow the cast to see any of them. But you know what the heck? It's not going to be educational. It's not going to be valuable. If all of you know the answer to this question, I might as well pack up and go home. No, wait a minute, I am at home. But I might as well just stop right now. But here is I have a bonus question for you, so you can get extra points. I didn't tell you about this ahead of time. How many of the cast members, oh no, it's not a true or false.
Oh.
How many of the cast members, you just have to raise your hand, are sexually active?
This feels a little bit weird.
I know. Okay, I threw you under the bus. Talk about feeling vulnerable, right? Okay, I threw you under the bus for a distinct reason. Thank you, Lorraine. She sees the humor in it. The reason I did that is we need to remove the STIGMA stigma. We need to get rid of this. Like, we need to, yeah, we're all having sex. What's wrong with that? That's a good thing. We're all looking happy because we are. Anyway, don't let my filter come off, but this is the RDH view. I know I can be a little bit more casual and out there, but we have to remove the stigma and we have to be out there to be able to talk about this with comfort. So I want you to know some statistics here with some of these questions. So, okay, no more frivolous talk here. Let's get back on board here. Okay. So first question that I'm going to pose to the panel, to the cast members. So the rest of you are going to have an opportunity, those that are listening in, and thank you for all your positive comments to that last little exchange there. The rest of you will have some extra thinking time. So first question, females have lower seroconversion rates. Okay, that's tough. That is antibody production. Okay, so seroconversion means antibody production. So females have lower antibody production when exposed to HPV than males. True or false to the cast? So I want you, no, don't put it up. I don't want to see it. You're gonna keep it hidden until the polling comes in.
Can we edit the video so that way then you remove Kathy's
Oh,
mic?
and you can't change your response when you see what everybody else is saying. Okay, so the cast has had a moment, and they're also going to have a few more moments here. Beth, can I have you launch the first poll, please? And I will read it again. Females have lower seroconversion rates or the production of antibodies when exposed to the virus than males do. So you can either choose true or false. We want everybody to weigh in. So make your selection. True or false. So let's give them a moment. We should have the Jeopardy theme playing here. Who can sing? I can't carry a tune in a bushel basket. Anybody sing? Do, 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 do. It'd be funny for the first one, but by the 8th one, we'd all be sick of it. Okay, can you bring in the results and see what everybody had to say?
Do you want us to share at the same time that I reveal?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Let's bring in the results and we'll see what everybody had to say. Okay, we have almost a 50-50 split. So to the question, females have lower seroconversion rates or the production of antibodies when exposed to HPV than males. We have 41% say it's true and 59% say it's false. So I'm going to close that and I want the panel to put up their answer. False, 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 and okay, very good. So the correct answer is false. So how did we get that data? That data came from the HIM study, the HPV in men study, because for so long females have been studied, but males have not been studied. And it's interesting to note the vulnerability of males to females. So females will seroconvert faster. So when they're exposed to the virus, they will develop the antibodies much faster than their male counterparts. When we talk about after, I love being at an age where I'm not shy to say anything. After penetrative sexual intercourse, males will, over 50% will develop an HPV infection, whereas for females, it's less than a third. Also, when you look at persistence of protection for females, it goes on to about 14 years after exposure, whereas for males, it's only about 9 years. So we can see that males are a lot more vulnerable and a lot more exposed to or subject to recurrent infections. Okay, so we now see how it all works. So let's go to the second question. Number 2, physical signs, this is to the cast only, physical signs of HPV infection will develop within 3 to 12 months following exposure to the virus. True or false? Okay. So let's see what your answer is. Physical signs will develop 3 to 12 months. True or false after exposure? Okay, so, oh no, I don't want to see them. Beth, sorry, I got confused there. Okay, physical signs to the members, or not to the members, getting all excited here. To those that are listening, physical signs of HPV infection will develop within 3 to 12 months following exposure to the virus. True or false? Do, 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 do. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, let's launch the results and see what people are thinking. Oh, we got, really 50-50 split. 49% true and 51% said false. Okay, that was a little bit tricky because physical signs of HPV infection, if they are going to show up, will take about 3 to 12 months. So let me just see what the cast voted. What did you weigh in on? True, false, false. So Kathleen, you are correct.
Woohoo!
And yes, very good. Okay, so let me tell you about that. And what did you say there, Beth? Did you say,
I thought
did
it
you
was true.
Yeah, okay. And Carrie, you said true. Okay, so Kathleen is the one that's correct. Because in most cases, clinical signs don't show up. So I'm talking about genital warts. That would be the clinical sign. And in most cases, a well-functioning immune system will handle everything really well. And within 24 months, the majority will clear. So I don't want to be a fearmongerer, that the majority with a well-functioning immune system will actually clear the virus. But for those that don't and are more susceptible, it can take up to 3 to 12 months. The virus can also remain latent for several years. Now, it's important to note as well that, again, this doesn't have to be full penetrative sexual intercourse. This can be oral sex. This can be skin to skin, meaning genital to genital contact as well, if the virus is active. So there are different ways of actually contracting the virus. Okay, number 3, question to the cast members only. So it gives our listeners a little bit longer to think about it. Nancy, or the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, have no upper age limits suggested for the HPV vaccine. True or false? No upper age limit suggested for the HPV vaccine. So this is the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. Is this true or false? Is there an upper age limit, true or false? Okay, so let's answer that question and have the listeners have an opportunity here. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization has no upper age limit suggested for the HPV vaccine. True or false?
Tricky.
Mhm.
So we'll give them an opportunity to weigh in there. Okay, so let's launch the results there. Oh, don't do that yet. Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. Why am I so confused today?
That's a
Okay,
good idea.
cast members, what did you say? Do you agree with this? And then the National Advisory Committee on Immunization have no upper age limit suggested for the HPV vaccine. What did you all think? True?
I think that they do. They have
False?
it.
False. Okay. Beth Parks, you are correct. Let's see how many aligned with you. 55% true, 45% false. Okay. And I'm going to defend those that did say false because some of this changed as of July 2024. However, even before that, they did talk about vulnerable populations that should consider having the vaccine, even if they are older. So the important thing to remember is that vulnerable age demographic, so the 35 to 45 to 50-year-old age bracket, plus a second cohort now of males over the age of 60, 65, they're only about 25% of that age group. So let's look at the 35-year-old. They've got about another 50 years to live, and they are not being protected. Only about 25% have actually been vaccinated. We are going to pay a very, very heavy price for this in the future. And that's scary. Another reason why I continue doing what I'm doing. Okay, so we can close off that poll and let's see if I can get the order of this one right. Number 4, the HPV vaccine will not be effective if an individual is already sexually active. So this is the question to the cast member. The HPV vaccine will not be effective if an individual is already sexually active. True or false? Okay, so keep your answer to yourself, and we will now launch the poll. How am I doing so far?
Great.
Good. Okay, question number 4. The HPV vaccine will not be effective if an individual is already sexually active. So our listeners, what do you think? True or false? We'll give them a moment to weigh in here and see what their thoughts are. Kathleen's getting all ready there. Don't show it yet. Stop it, stop it, stop it.
She's so
Okay.
excited.
Before we launch the results, let's see. Well, I'm on a roll here now. Let's see what the cast thinks. Is this true or false? The HPV vaccine will not be effective if an individual is already sexually active. Carrie says false. Kathleen says false. Beth says false. What does the audience say? Let's see what the results are. Ah, very good. 94% said false. 6% said true. So let's look at this. So a young woman who has not had any sexual exposure is going to have the highest degree of quick seropositivity, antibody protection, and is going to elicit a very, very strong response. However, the vaccine has been created, the Gardasil 9, to address 9 high-risk strains that have the potential to become oncogenic. So the opportunity for someone to have actually been exposed to all of them is probably not happening. So the opportunity for the vaccine to be effective after sexual activity has already commenced makes sense. Think of the person too that maybe has reached an age of 50 years old or whatever. We look at divorce rates, unfortunately, or for whatever reason, all of a sudden is out there and exposed and not vaccinated. Maybe they married their high school sweetheart. Maybe they've been in a totally monogamous relationship and not had any other exposure. So for them, the vaccine also is going to be very beneficial. So this is a shared decision, as we mentioned with the former question. This is a shared decision between the person and their medical provider. But there's also an opportunity for a virtual consultation, which is really a cool opportunity for the Canadian population. And if you Google it, Gardasil vaccine or HPV vaccine virtual consultation. Some provinces there is a small fee for it. Some provinces it is offered free. And it's an opportunity to be able to have a set appointment with a healthcare professional and be able to talk about, whether the vaccine would be beneficial for you. Okay, number 5. So this question is posed to the cast members only. At this point, Canada has achieved herd immunity due to the number of people vaccinated with the HPV vaccine. True or false? So let's give them an opportunity. No, Kathleen, get that card down. Geez, some people are overachievers. We know you're super smart. You wouldn't have had the success you've had if you weren't super smart. So we don't need to prove that. Okay, I don't want to see the answer. Let's launch the poll. Okay, so for the listeners, Canada has achieved herd immunity due to the number of people vaccinated with the HPV vaccine. So to our listeners, it says true or false. So we'll give them a moment here. Okay. Before we launch the results, let's see how the cast weighed in. The question was, Canada has achieved herd immunity due to the number of people vaccinated with the HPV vaccine. Is this true or false? Let's see your answer. Come on, Kathleen. Oh, now she's going to play hard to get. Okay, false, false, false. Very, very good. Okay, let's see what the audience voted. Oh, we got a smart audience. Don't go home yet, though. There's more to learn. But let's talk about this. So COVID came in, and of course, we know what happened to vaccination rates went way down because it took a priority. People were vaxxed out, for lack of better terminology. So when we look at the vaccination rate right now among adolescents, it's lower than it has been in some time. It's picking up very, very quickly, but it's at about 60%. And in order for herd immunity to actually occur, we're looking at about 70% or higher. So we've really got to get those rates up there much, much higher. So I want to address that. I'm just looking at our time to see where we're at, and we're doing very well. We're about halfway through the questions here, a little bit more.
Question.
Yes.
What is our
Yeah,
number at
please
right now?
do.
So we're not in the herd immunity. Do you know where it is or the last time the stats were released? I know it does change with COVID and everything. I just love to know if we're close to that 70%.
You know what, Carrie? I read that recently and I don't think I have that right in front of me. And I wish I did. And I'm very, very cautious to do this. I never give an anecdotal response because I could be all wrong. I want to say around 54%, but don't quote me on that. I know that we're not where we need to be. But one thing I do want to talk about, and I would be happy to open up a discussion on this because it's something that we need to address because we're all involved in a profession that deals with evidence-based decision making. So is Health Canada. The Public Health Agency of Canada is like another organization and association. The Health Canada is like a regulatory body. The WHO, and there's a lot of politics behind this, and I really don't mind opening up a discussion, as I said, but the WHO kind of had this recommendation that came into our inbox. I got it from a couple of different avenues about reduced dosing schedule, about, for lack of a better term, one and done, having one vaccine. The politics behind this, so instead of having a 2-shot, a 3-shot dose, it talked about one dose. There are a lot of politics behind this. First of all, and this is not coming from any of the pharmaceutical companies, this is general knowledge and critical thinking. First of all, it's a cheat on vaccination rates because all of a sudden it would look like, oh, we've got much higher vaccination rates. It also, under our government policies and the Public Health Agency of Canada, provides us with a more cost-effective vaccination program. But what was the objective behind this? The objective behind this was lower to middle income countries who have no opportunistic screening programs to be able to allow some kind of avenue to reduce the high burden of cervical cancers. So let me go back. I just said the key word, cervical cancers. The modeling was done as far as how long the protection would last, or the results were done on modeling only. The decision for the WHO to actually publish this was based on one RCT, one randomized control trial. There was a single one, that's it. And the rest were observational studies. We know as critical thinkers and in that hierarchy of our decision making that this is not near enough. So it's opened up a lot of controversy to be able to say, okay, males were not even studied in this. And we're taking, we've taken 2 steps forward and we're now taking 3 steps back when 2/3 of the burden of HPV-related disease are not even related to cervical cancer. I don't know whether our listeners know that. The majority of HPV burden is number 1 is oropharyngeal cancer. That's our domain. And that happened in 2012. It was supposed to happen. The prediction was around 2020. That happened way, way back in 2012, that we actually had that exponential increase of oropharyngeal cancers go way beyond. So it concerns a lot of people that we are playing Russian roulette with this particular option of one and done or reduced dosage because we know better. We know that modeling has to look at definitive information. It can't go on observational. And we know that males, look at all the stuff we talked about with the first question. Males seroconvert slower. They're susceptible to recurrent infection. HPV, the highest burden of HPV, I'm going to take a breath in a minute, you can talk, but the highest burden of HPV oropharyngeal cancer occurs 4.5 times higher in males than females. So why are we gambling? Why are we taking that step back and taking that chance? I know it's a controversial statement, but yes, Carrie.
One of those questions sometimes come up too is cost. And so I know I can speak from Ontario, it is covered, at least for the kids. And I'm assuming as we get older now, that's being rolled in with the changes from July. Do other provinces have that opportunity, or can a access to care be an issue with there being a fee for this? Do you know?
Access to care in some situations can be. So say somebody that is in good health, is not immunocompromised, is beyond, that original upper age limit. And that upper age limit kept increasing because of efficacy and because of data, not modeling, but data, significant real world data that stated that the incidence was dropping. That's another thing that's not happening though yet for us with oropharyngeal cancers. The rates aren't dropping yet. So we should not be making a step in the wrong direction when our rates are not at that point to substantiate it. But as far as cost is concerned, I did see in some of the Merck data, there was a QR code, and I am going to actually send that out in a follow-up so that when you do send out the HPV talking points, that we can send that information out. And it's a QR code that leads to more information on funding. So again, sometimes our health insurance plans will allow, our medical plans will allow. Also, there is a wellness aspect to some of our healthcare plans where we can select through corporate plans or through a spouse that has a plan, that we can select certain modalities that we want to include, of which some can be the vaccine. But I know that the parameters around just having school immunization have increased exponentially as far as funding is concerned. So great question. Thank you for that. Okay, should we continue on with questions here? Because I want to make sure, I know we've got a few questions coming in, so I want to make sure that we give people that opportunity. Okay, number 6, to the cast. It is possible to be in a monogamous relationship for more than 20 years and be suddenly diagnosed with genital warts. Is this true or false? So I want you to keep your response to yourself, Kathleen Bacrossi, and the rest of you. And I want you to, if you could please, Beth, launch the poll for our audience. Is it possible, or it is possible, sorry, to be in a monogamous relationship, so one partner for more than 20 years and be suddenly diagnosed with genital warts? Is this true or false? So let's give our audience a few moments to respond to this question. It's a tricky one, there's no doubt.
I'm gonna have to guess on this one.
Yeah. This is like the I Love Lucy when Ricky, I know I'm dating myself by saying this, but you've got some splaining to do, Lucy. Okay, it is possible to be in a monogamous relationship for more than 20 years and be suddenly diagnosed with genital warts, and somebody is rooting for Kathleen. So before we show the audience response, Kathleen, what do you say? It is possible to be in a monogamous relationship for more than 20 years and be suddenly diagnosed with genital warts. Is that true, Kathleen, or false?
Aren't we gonna have everybody?
Nope, you like to
Just
show
you. This is all you.
Nope, don't mess me over. False. Okay. Beth, true. Carrie.
I want it to be false. I
Yeah.
do, but I really feel like
Awkward.
it's I
I
yeah.
feel like it's true,
Okay.
but
You're
feel
a
like-
fence sitter there, Carrie.
I am. I was sitting on the fence because I wanted to ask clarifying questions, but I knew that we didn't have an hour to answer all the questions before I made the right decision.
I
I
know. Well, this is a
see it.
full day presentation. And I know we have to be off by 6 o'clock, right? I'm kidding, before everybody goes in the chat and goes crazy. Okay, Beth, congratulations. You are correct. The virus, true. Okay, 78% true, 22% said false. Very, very good. So that's interesting. Okay, so the virus can remain dormant for many years. That's why it is impossible. So this might save a lot of marriages out there. I feel like a counselor right now, that this can happen and we cannot trace back. So let's think of how the contact happened. This might have been through, I always struggle with what this is called, like intimate kissing, French kissing. I always say that thing you used to do when you first got together, but you don't do anymore with your partner. But intimate kissing. So that kind of contact, I know, my filter.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah. So it is actually true because it can remain dormant. And there could be cofactors. There's comorbidities that happen to people along the way. Maybe their immune system changed, right? Maybe they don't have the same protection. Thank you, Lorraine, for calling me precious. Okay, number 7. So this is the last, we've got 2 more questions here. Number 7, it is important for both males and females to have an HPV screening test. So I'd like the cast to silently cast their vote or select their answer. Okay, it is important for both males and females to have an HPV screening test. Is this true or false? Okay, so let's launch that then, Beth, for our audience. So for our listeners, is it important for both males and females to have an HPV screening test? True or false? Again, these are tough questions.
Mhm.
I'm really impressed with the audience and their level of critical thinking. They're tough questions and they're controversial.
Okay.
But what is life without a little bit of controversy, right?
Mhm.
Little bit of excitement. Okay, so before we go to the audience, I'm not going to ask you, Kathleen, first, but everybody, it is important, cast members, for both males and females to have an HPV screening test. True or false? Let's see your responses. True, true.
Kath?
Come on, Kathleen, stick to your guns. Okay, let's see what the audience said. 96% and 4%. Okay, so I know I'm being mean. We can argue words here, but I said both. There currently is no Health Canada or no FDA approved tests for men.
Hmm.
Unless men have a clinical symptom, there is no way of testing for presence of HPV. So this is very controversial. For women, we have the pap test. So we have cervical testing, but the pap test is only looking for changes. So now those of our members that are here, our listeners that are from BC, I am very envious, and I know that it's going to make its migration. I believe Alberta as well, but don't quote me on that. But it will make its migration across Canada for the self-swab cervical testing, because that has a much higher sensitivity and a much better predictive negative rate than using the pap test itself. Because what causes the dysplasia or cervical intraepithelial neoplasia or cervical cancer is the presence of a persistent high-risk strain of HPV. So if we can do that self-swab testing, so it's just like the COVID swab, only obviously in a different anatomical location where we can self-swab, which ladies that are listening, yay, 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 is so much better, then it makes perfect sense to be able to have that higher degree of sensitivity. And Lorraine, a great question about the oral DNA testing. I have the utmost of respect for oral DNA and the testing. Those of people that are at risk, okay, it makes sense to do the oral testing. But let's go to this aspect. At any given time, 10% of the population is walking around with an oral HPV infection. That is acquired data that we have that we can stand behind. That doesn't mean that they have a persistent infection. They can clear it at any time within that 24 months. But if they are ongoing into a persistent infection, then they are at risk. But I'm going to pose the question to the cast. What do we then do about it? Do we gut them from the maxillary sinuses right down to do a total neck dissection and look for something if they have no symptoms? It is a very, very tricky thing, and researchers are working so hard on this to try to get an idea of how do we actually address this. So for a dental office, and I know I invite controversy because I know there are some dental offices that are doing it, but for a dental office, and I go by my colleague who I will stand behind, as being one of the most credible resources that we have in our world today. And that is Brian Hill, the founder of the Oral Cancer Foundation. He has sat on every regulatory board right across the board. Right across North America and some global boards as well, is the fact that opportunistic screening on everybody is going to elevate extreme anxiety for something that will be, in most cases, addressed by a well-functioning immune system. So I'm going to continue on, because if we have questions, I want to allow that time. I want to allow 10 minutes. We've only got one more question, and I want to allow that question so that we can get through this and then have that 10 minutes. So the last question is, and to the cast, the body's adaptive immune response. So that means how our body basically responds to HPV exposure provides far greater protection than immunity acquired through the vaccine. Is this true or false? So I want the cast members to select their response. And then Beth, if you can launch the poll for the audience. And we'll read it again. The body's adaptive immune response, so how our body responds to being exposed to HPV, to the virus, provides far greater protection than immunity acquired through vaccination. True or false? Again, a very tricky question. A lot of critical thinking goes into this one. And something, I'm not going to say anymore.
Come on, give it away, please. Help us out.
No, I've got to just. The body's adaptive immune response from HPV exposure provides far greater protection than immunity acquired through vaccination. Okay, I'd like to hear what the View has to say. Cast members.
It's a trick question.
False.
Yeah.
Kathleen. Carrie, false. False. Okay, let's see what the audience thinks. False, 72%, so about, 3/4 have said false, and about 1/4 have said true. The majority of you are in fact correct. And let me tell you the amazing reason why this is so. This virus is totally different. If you have this virus in one spot, it doesn't go through the blood to all different areas, because the virus is intraepithelial only. It connects with it injects its DNA into the basal epithelium, the basal cells of the epithelium. Completely different than immunization or another type of a virus. Other viruses go right into the blood or the lymphatics. So when we get that vaccine, that intramuscular vaccine, because of the particles, the microparticles being nanometers in size, it goes right into the lymph nodes and elicits a response. I remember with the COVID vaccine, I had a huge lymph node that swelled underneath my one arm, freaked me out totally for about the first 2 weeks with the COVID vaccine. But it's because it goes right into the lymphatic system. So that is in fact false. We get much higher protection from the vaccine, way, way more than what we can ever get. It weans off through natural exposure. So I'm going to go through one more thing really, really quickly, because I'm nice. I just want to go through at the end in order to get your 1 hour CE. I want to stress a few points to you. So listen up. This is important. The vaccine is most effective prior to the commencement of sexual activity. We have talked about this and the fact that it elicits a really strong response before somebody is actually exposed to it. Physical signs of HPV infection will develop within 3 to 12 months following exposure. We know that this is not always the case, that people don't always develop symptoms. We also talked about the prevalence, that over 75% of Canadians will have an HPV infection, one or more in their lifetime, and most will be unaware. In fact, the cast members are all sexually active, so we did hear about that. Vulnerability was the name of the game here. We know about the immunity acquired through the vaccine related to natural immunity. And finally, last but not least, over 500 million vaccines have been administered worldwide, and safety studies have been initiated by at least 6 different global bodies that monitor on an ongoing basis. So I'm going to shut it down because we've got a few minutes left. I just want to know if there are any other questions.
That was awesome, Joe.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes.
Very-
Did you learn something?
Yes.
And I
Good.
loved the way you did it too, because just asking us to think about it first. So by putting that test out there, it really helps us to analyze what we know and what we don't know, because even some of the ones we were guessing at. So I have some homework to do. I thought you think you know something and then your knowledge is questioned and you're like, oh shoot, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I've learned so much over the last several years. I'm obviously not an OBGYN, I'm not a pharmacist, but I've co-facilitated with both. And oral medicine pathologists and prosthodontists and people that have just progressed this so much further in Alberta, particularly, has just skyrocketed with HPV vaccines now being administered in the dental practice. So, like you learn so much. Are there biological indicators? Okay, there's some good questions there. So please feel free to bring these to my attention.
So there's one question here that came in. Well, does the vaccine working later in life, or do they need a booster later? Does the vaccine?
At this point in time, there is not a booster indicated because the whole idea is vaccinating at a time where people are most sexually active and they have an opportunity to be able to develop the immunity, be exposed to it, have that immune response, be able to develop even further. So at this point in time, there is not a recommendation. The recommendation, though, and the way to start this conversation with your patients, simple question. I'm going to give you this so easy. Have you had the HPV vaccine? Super simple. Don't worry about starting a conversation with any other thoughts other than, have you had the HPV vaccine? And ask your 40, 50-year-old patients and say, and then get into it and tell them that it's like the common cold. Most people will clear it. However, for some that are compromised or have had some life changes, whatever, the vaccine can be beneficial. Here's some additional information, which we're going to send to you following the CE questions and answering the quiz and so forth. So that's one thing I would like to say.
And there's another question that came in here about looking for pictures or case studies. And when you take Joe's course, you are going to see all of that information there. So today was really about promoting and just discussion and letting us know that there is more that we can all do. We all have a bit of homework, as Beth said, to go back and to learn this. And definitely for those case studies and for more in detail thing, definitely take some of Joe's courses. They are eye-opening and very relatable.
I do have a lot of pictures, a lot of a visual journey, very much so in my experiential course that we offer twice a year. The next one is coming up in April of next year. But also, if my West friends are interested, start chatting it up and letting us know. We'd love to bring the program out West as well. So thank you.
Awesome.
Biological indicators. So that's a good question from Janet here. Tell us if the virus will pass or remain in the body. That's a really tough one because there are a couple of indicators, E6 and E7, which indicate seropositivity. But as far as knowing the extent of the immunity or how long it's going to last, that is very challenging. One of the things that they will do, though, is with pathology testing, if there is a disease, a cancer, that they will look at the strain itself, and that will give an indication as to the immediate urgency of addressing, possibly with a further like completion of the series or whatever it may be.
Oh, I just remembered. I have some prizes.
Oh, winners. Yes, go for it.
Okay, I'm not going to share the screen because everyone's name is on here. So whoever's registered, your name is in here. So I will just click on this. I don't know if you can hear the spinning of the wheel. Michelle Quasi. It's our first winner. I'm going to just take a picture so I remember. All right, and then we'll do the next one. This is for the talking points. It'll be coming in like a printed version. along with our new healthcare referral pad that we have. And I'll send you some information about that. Oksana Perchik is our next winner. And then one more. Sandra Bell. All right, so we have our 3 winners. So we will get in touch with you and get your address and send the talking points to you in a hard copy, as well as the new referral pads that we have. Yeah, and then everybody else will get the electronic copy of the HPV talking points, and you should get them by Wednesday, along with this recording and your certificate and the quizzes that you put together, Joe. Thank you so much. You're always such a wonderful guest and presenter and so knowledgeable. I have just a quick video on as to what is coming up. So I'm just going to share this quickly. All right.
Love that.
Lots still coming up over the
Great.
next couple of months. Yeah, so thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. That was awesome and so informative. And this will be our last show until January 10th, 2025.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It helps.
Lots of people are just saying how much they enjoyed this session. So thank you so much, Joe. This was just really insightful, really well organized, very creative the way you put this
Yeah.
together. So thank you so much for being here with us.
You are so welcome. And I said thanks to each and every one of you in the chat, but it only went to the hosts and the panelists. So thank you to the panelists, but thank you to everyone for taking this message back to practice and into your world. Can't thank you enough for being here.
Well, and thank you for just making it really fun and taking some of the stigma out of this whole conversation. Honestly, you just have a wonderful way about how you bring this forward in an inspirational way. So thank you for that. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your Friday, wherever you are. We've got lots of people joining us from clinic. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And we look forward to seeing you in the new year. So everyone, we wish you from the RDH view a prosperous start to 2025.
Perfect.
Bye.
Bye.